Oi, alright, how's it going? I'm Grant, you're you. This is Doodle Review, coming through with a new album to listen to and chat some fraff about whether I like it or not. Really, today, Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes' latest Dark Rainbow, an album I thought I was going to eye roll my whole way through, but instead ended up doing my best De Niro impression. First, a quick bit of background on Carter. The singer emerged in the mid-2000s as the frontman of UK hardcore darlings Gallows, releasing 2 albums, Orchestra of Wolves in 2006 and Grey Britain in 2009. Both great, but to my mind, the latter being an absolute masterpiece. Carter left Gallows in 2011 and launched a somewhat glam rock project called Pure Love that didn't really take off. I honestly kind of spaced it at the time, but from what I remember, it was a little bit cringe. It just felt like it was trying to capture that very earnest, we're a good time rock and roll band thing, which is it's really cool, but it's really hard to do without falling into parody. Just ask, The Darkness. Anyway, after a bit of a retreat, Carter then re-emerged in 2015 with the Rattlesnakes, a project that managed to bridge the gap between the aggression of Gallows with the accessibility that Pure Love were kind of going after. I really enjoyed their first record, Blossom. It wasn't groundbreaking, but it didn't need to be. The album was just 10 to 12 slabs of really fun hard rock, plenty of punk rock anger, some hardcore energy and sensibilities, a few banger riffs, and some great choruses. Carter had clearly found a keeper of a creative partner in Dean Richardson, part guitarist, part creative director, but most importantly, a really strong songwriter who knows his way around an arrangement and most definitely a hook. After Blossom though, the duo kind of changed direction somewhat, painting a target on the Radio 1 rock chart and barreling toward it full force with Modern Ruin and subsequent records End of Suffering and Sticky. The distortion was dialed back in favour of kind of reverb, and all of a sudden what was a raw hard rock band became a bit of a radio bland band. I got the sense the band's direction was less going after a mainstream audience but actually pandering to it. And all of that, is entitled fan speak, and I'll cop to that. At the end of the day, fair play to any musician going after a bit of success, especially when you've come up proper grassroots style and delivered some legitimately great music in the past. For me though, the music and vibe shifted. It wasn't really interesting to me anymore, so I dipped. Though, as a side note, I will say the band remained a really compelling live act, having seen them a few times kind of over this period. The teasers for Dark Rainbow, the group's 5th album, dropped towards the end of last year, and as a full-on cynic at this point, the imagery of Carter crooning with a slick back, a long coat covering a suit, and this kind of grandiose instrumental of Man of the Hour had me immediately rolling my eyes, like, dipping into the Arctic Monkeys playbook now, are we? Alright. So yes, I went into this album with the view of okay, this is kind of an extension of the band's commercial drive, not necessarily chasing the chart this time, but attempting a stylistic shift that has already proven to work against all odds for the UK's biggest band. How the band landed on this new style is kind of immaterial really. What matters is how it sounds, obviously, and honestly Dark Rainbow is far from the graveyard shift at the Tranquility Base Hotel experience I was expecting, and actually pretty enjoyable. You quickly realise on first listen that about 60% of that stylistic shift I keep referencing has actually been embodied more in the visuals and the presentation rather than the music. Yes, the tempos have slowed a little, the piano is a recurring character, and Carter is definitely adopting a bit of an Alex Turner lounge rock crooner swagger at certain points. But the band have actually blended these elements into their existing mix of aggressive but palatable radio rock rather than completely disguising themselves in a new costume. The result is an album that manages to achieve what I think most bands strive for when trying on new sounds, but few actually really make it, which is to take enough of the new to make things sound interesting while retaining the right amount of the tried and tested stuff to make things kind of accessible and rewarding for the existing fan base. Man of the Hour, the first single, the one that initially prompted the eye roll from me, puts the piano and retro futuristic space age synths up front, practically baiting the Arctic Monkeys comparisons that it did rightly draw straight away, but then explodes into an epic chorus driven by familiar fuzz from the guitar and bass. It's a great hook, and the song overall really showcases the now quite impressive strength of Carter's clean vocals. This is followed up with Can I Take You Home, leaning even further into the lounge rock vibes with a muted electric piano, quiet drums and smooth bass tones, but once again not leaving the audience in suspense too long before a gritty sounding chorus comes in. Also included in the mix are some straight up rockers that, aside from a shared production aesthetic and some of Carter's softer singing, sit outside of this kind of sophisticated rock vibe and strangely still work. Honey is a great example of this and a great opener to the album, with a solid driving chord progression, some fun lead parts and a little riffy breakdown and very singable chorus. The same could be said for the penultimate track, Self Love. While the blending of the aesthetics is most definitely a big success, there are still a few aspects that, like some of the band's prior material, don't engage me. I do feel like there are some pretty derivative riffs and progressions in the mix, like Happier Days for example, which is totally fine, it does its thing, but it just kind of feels quite stock. The closing track, Dark Rainbow, is also a bit bland while trying to be climactic. Production wise, there's so much to love here, and credit to Dean Richardson and Cam Blackwood for how well they established a cohesive sonic tone on an album that's dabbling in lots of instruments, and also includes surprises along the way as well, like the spooky horror synths on the back end of Self Love. The mournful horns on Sun Bright Golden Happening are really nice touches. My only gripe is the guitar tone. It's super saturated, and I think that's just a holdover of kind of what seems to make commercial rock radio these days. It works in the context of everything else. It's just quite fatiguing to my ears, like all bite with little depth. Overall though, this is a solid, enjoyable album. The songwriting isn't the most original, but it is effective with lots of catchy singable moments, and what the Rattlesnakes have achieved stylistically is pretty impressive. I'd give this a 6.5. And that's time to knock it on the head. That's what I think. What about you? Tell me what you think in the comments below. Are you a Frank Carter fan? Have you been about with them for a while? What do you think of this new one and this stylistic direction? Let me know. While you're kicking about down there, taps and clicks and all that, I'm sure there's a subscribe button there. Hit it. Check out some other videos I'm in the description below that you'll be interested in. Subscribe, share some thoughts, show some love, or just hell some abuse in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers mate, bye.